You will not do anything about this, and shame on you, because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London you are not doing that.
Let's move on to Assembly Member Hall.
Okay, thank you. Morning, Mr. Mayor. I'm discussing the protests. So on the holiest day in the Jewish calendar and on the day of the horrific terror attack in Manchester, pro-Palestinian protesters gathered along Whitehall and the Cenotaph to chant offensive slogans and clap to them, play loud music and wave.
Buckle up, guys. Today we are going to dive straight into a fiery confrontation that sets the tone for everything to come. In just 30 seconds, the atmosphere turns electric as a furious voice lashes out, "Shame on you." It's not just an accusation. It's a declaration that the Jewish community has been abandoned. The words slice through the calm of the chamber, charging it with tension. This moment grabs the viewer instantly. Anger, conviction, and moral pressure collide head-on. It's the ignition spark of a debate that promises no easy answers. You can almost feel the room tighten as everyone senses this won't be a polite exchange but a battle of beliefs and responsibilities.
Offensive signs, protesters gathered at Liverpool Street Station, screaming chants at passing commuters. Protesters could be heard chanting "from the river to the sea" and describing Israel as a terror state. So on the day of the Manchester terror attack, was that behaviour appropriate?
No, I don't think it was. I think it's more to distinguish between what's lawful and what's considerate, mindful and sensitive. And it's worth just spending time talking to Jewish people. You know, there is one state that has a Jewish majority, and many people have an affinity to that who are of the Jewish faith. And on the day when a place of worship, on the Day of Atonement, has been attacked by a terrorist, you can understand, I hope, why Jewish people are feeling frightened. And let's not go to what the law is. I think you use the word appropriate. That's a good word. I don't think it's appropriate because people are feeling scared and frightened. More so than more so.
Here the stage is set with detailed precision. The questioner outlines the scene of protests, the chants, the timing, and the emotional collision with a day of terror and mourning. It's the prosecutor's moment, building a careful chain of evidence before the court of public opinion. As an observer, you see the layering of facts designed to evoke outrage and empathy simultaneously. Each description adds emotional gravity, protesters waving signs, shouting slogans, and disrupting sacred moments. The speaker crafts a picture of insensitivity, trying to corner the mayor into moral accountability. Every second feels like a setup for confrontation, an argument perfectly primed for a defensive reaction. By the end of this segment, the tension is so thick you can sense the storm about to break.
And they have, in the recent past.
Okay, so do you think that the behaviour of the protesters in Whitehall and at Liverpool Street is anti-Semitic?
Well, you're asking a general question about individuals' behaviour. I think it's insensitive, and I think it's...
No, is it anti-Semitic?
No, I don't think marching's anti-Semitic.
So you don't think screaming "from the river to the sea" and calling it a terror state is anti-Semitic?
So the members now extended a question from "is the march anti-Semitic" to now specific phrases of anti-Semitic.
Well, the phrase is constantly being used during these hate marches. This is why I'm asking the question. Do you think to scream "from the river to the sea," which they're doing during these hate marches, is appropriate?
Now the mayor steps into defence mode, and the tone changes from accusation to justification. He draws a fine line between what's lawful and what's decent, a tactical move to appear reasonable while dodging blame. From a third-party lens, this is the balancing act of a politician trying to protect both free speech and public sensitivity. He acknowledges the fear of Jewish Londoners yet anchors his answer in principle rather than emotion. The audience can see the strategy, concede the feeling but not the fault. It's calm, calculated, and designed to deflect the emotional charge. His voice softens the clash but can't dissolve the discomfort. This is the first attempt to steady a ship that's already rocking in turbulent waters.
Appropriate. Do you think it is anti-Semitic?
Okay, I don't think it's anti-Semitic, and I think it's all about context. And we had the same conversation, by the way, Chair, a month ago when the member was arguing that the far right should be allowed to march, and we were having this conversation about Article 10 and freedom of expression. Now, I already said I think it's inappropriate and insensitive on the day of a terrorist attack to have these sorts of marches. Some slogans can be anti-Semitic, but it's all about context. And in certain contexts, yes, those slogans are anti-Semitic. In other contexts, they're not.
Well, we will differ on that view. All we ever hear is from the river to the sea, and we all know what that means, and that is anti-Semitic.
The debate now sharpens like a blade. The questioner zeroes in on the phrase "from the river to the sea," demanding a clear yes or no. The mayor, however, resists the simplicity, invoking context and interpretation. As a commentator, you can see this as the turning point where ideology meets language. The clash is no longer about protests, it's about meaning, intent, and identity. Every word carries political weight, and both sides know one misstep could define them. The questioner frames it as hate, the mayor reframes it as complexity. The exchange is fast, tense, and riveting, a moral standoff played out in real time. You can feel both the outrage and the restraint fighting for dominance in that chamber.
Released a statement the day after the protests, and at no point did you criticise the appalling behaviour we saw. You were unequivocal when you were talking about one particular protest last month, claiming that that was far right. Well, so why don't you describe these protests as clearly? Because they're not only plainly wrong, they are anti-Semitic.
Look, the difference, I would say, respectfully, between the member and myself is I'm consistent. So the member argues for the right or the far right to protest, but criticises pro-Palestinians.
They're not far right. They wave flags like this. That does not make me far right. That makes me very patriotic, actually. So you immediately come down on those, and yet we have had these anti-Semitic comments constantly from these hate marches, and you don't comment on that at all.
Now the atmosphere thickens as the questioner attacks the mayor's consistency. She accuses him of being selective, quick to condemn one side, silent on another. From an observer's viewpoint, this is where the emotional current shifts from policy to credibility. The conversation stops being about protesters and becomes about integrity. The questioner's tone hardens. Her frustration builds into accusation. It's political chess played with moral pieces, each move intended to expose hypocrisy. You sense the mayor's calm thinning, the defences getting thinner under repeated blows. It's an accountability moment, raw, personal, and uncomfortable to watch, yet impossible to turn away from.
At all. Last month you said politicians have refused to condemn the rising tide of hatred in this country. So you should be happy to condemn the behaviour we saw at these pro-Palestinian protests.
Well, again, we're going to disagree here because I think Stephen Jackson Lennon is a racist. He's a violent racist, and when he organises a march, it's a far-right march.
Isn't it interesting? That is racist. To call people, to say that from the river to the sea isn't, of course, no, because perhaps that's coming from a side that should be allowed to say that. To say terror state, perhaps that's allowed as well. It's amazing, isn't it? And yet merely flying a flag, immediately it's far right. I mean, do you actually understand why the Jewish community feels unable to do, as you say, live, work and worship freely without fear of harassment, discrimination, intimidation or violence when they see the duplicity of your remarks when discussing protests on different sides? Do you not understand why they are so concerned about this?
Actually, I've never mentioned flags. I know she's obsessed by flags. I've never mentioned flags. I'm quite clear in relation to what rights were allowed in terms of freedom of expression, freedom of speech, the right to protest, the cornerstone of our democracy, even when you disagree with what people...
This part is where the verbal temperature truly spikes. The mayor calls a far-right organiser a racist, and instantly, the questioner pushes back, charging hypocrisy and double standards. For an outsider, this is the heart of the drama. Two narratives colliding with full force. The mayor defends freedom of speech, the member defends moral clarity. Flags, chants, and ideology become weapons in a war of perception. Every sentence feels like a sparring strike, calculated to wound but not break. The power struggle is laid bare, control of the narrative versus emotional truth. It's no longer about policy, it's about who gets to define justice. This sequence burns with political theatre, loud, sharp, and utterly gripping.
People are protesting about, I will fight to the death the right to protest and the right to march and so forth, even the right of Stephen Yaxley Lennon, a racist, to march. He's allowed to do so.
Mr. Mayor, look, you are the mayor of this wonderful city. Does it not worry you that there is one community that has to lock its children in schools for their safety? There is one community that can't come into London because of their listening to chants like "From the River to the Sea," where they're looking at Palestinian flags and hostility towards them. Do you not see that in London, to have one community that is so badly disadvantaged by what is going on with these anti-Semitic chants, that you, as mayor of this great city, should do something about that?
Chair, I couldn't be clear in my remarks in relation to my concern about the fare, the increased fare Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the globe are feeling after the events of last Thursday. I've gone out of my way since October the 7th, 2023, to reassure Jewish Londoners and Jewish people across the country and across the...
But they don't feel reassured. How can they feel reassured?
Member, but there's a number of interruptions now that you're making. I understand the point you try to get across. Mainly because he's not
listening, Chair. He's not listening and he's not understanding.
But you can't keep interrupting. You have to allow him to answer in the way that he does, and then you can come back again. No one will object to that.
I tell you what, I'll finish here because you will not do anything about this, and shame on you, because our Jewish community need looking after, and as Mayor of London, you are not doing that. And my time is up, Chairman.
And here comes the emotional finale, the heart and hammer of the entire debate. The questioner paints a painful picture of Jewish families locking their children inside, terrified of chants and hostility. The mayor insists he's been working to reassure them, but his words meet disbelief. From a third-party view, this is the breaking point: empathy and accusation crash in open view. The interruptions, frustration, and raised voices make it feel almost cinematic. When she finally says, "You will not do anything about this, shame on you," it lands like a verdict. The debate closes not with resolution but with emotional exhaustion, leaving the audience with more questions than answers. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.